The antiseptic smell of St. Mary's Hospital permeated the air as Nurse Sarah Wilson rushed down the bustling corridor. Her long brown hair, neatly tied in a ponytail, swayed with each determined step. Today marked her 5th year at this public hospital in the heart of Chicago, and little did she know that this ordinary Tuesday would change the course of her life forever. As Sarah approached room 305, she took a deep breath, plastered on her warmest smile, and knocked gently before entering. "Good morning, Mr. Anderson. How are you feeling today?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine care and compassion. The man lying in the hospital bed turned his head slowly, his weary eyes meeting Sarah's. Michael Anderson, 45, had been admitted 2 weeks ago with severe chest pains. His salt and pepper hair was disheveled, and his usually clean-shaven face now sported a scruffy beard. Despite his worn appearance, there was a quiet strength in his gaze that caught Sarah's attention. "I've been better, Nurse Wilson," Michael replied with a weak smile. "But I suppose I should be grateful I'm still here to complain, right?" Sarah chuckled as she began checking his vitals. "That's the spirit, Mr. Anderson. Positivity can work wonders for recovery." As she worked, she noticed the family photo on his bedside table. 2 young girls, probably around 8 and 10 years old, smiling brightly next to Michael. There was an empty space in the picture where Sarah assumed a wife or partner should have been. "Your daughters?" Sarah asked, gesturing to the photo. Michael's eyes softened as he looked at the picture. "Yes, Lily and Emma, they're my whole world." Sarah noticed a flicker of sadness cross his face. "They must be worried about you. When was the last time they visited?" Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yesterday, it's hard for them, you know. Their mom, she passed away 2 years ago, cancer. And now with me in here, they're staying with their aunt. I need to get better for them." Sarah's heart ached for this man and his daughters. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Anderson, I promise you, we're doing everything we can to get you back to your girls as soon as possible." As Sarah continued her checkup, she and Michael fell into an easy conversation. She learned that he was a high school history teacher, passionate about inspiring young minds. In turn, she shared stories about her journey to becoming a nurse, the challenges and rewards of working in a public hospital. Over the next few days, Sarah found herself looking forward to her visits to room 305. There was something about Michael that drew her in, his quiet strength, his devotion to his daughters, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She caught herself lingering in his room longer than necessary, sharing jokes and stories that went beyond the usual nurse-patient small talk. One afternoon, as Sarah was adjusting Michael's IV, he suddenly winced in pain. "Mr. Anderson, what's wrong?" she asked, alarmed. It's my chest," he gasped, clutching at his hospital gown. "The pain, it's back." Sarah's training kicked in immediately. She called for assistance and began assessing his condition. As the room filled with doctors and nurses, Sarah found herself holding Michael's hand, whispering words of encouragement. "Stay with me, Michael. Your girls need you. Fight this." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Michael was rushed into emergency surgery to address a complication with his heart condition. Sarah, despite her shift ending, couldn't bring herself to leave the hospital. She paced the waiting area, her mind racing with thoughts of Michael and his daughters. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the surgeon emerged with good news. The procedure had been successful, and Michael was expected to make a full recovery. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, followed by a realization that startled her. Her concern for Michael went beyond that of a dedicated nurse, for her patient. As she stood there in the dimly lit corridor, Sarah acknowledged the truth she had been trying to ignore. She was falling for Michael Anderson. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. It was unprofessional, potentially unethical, and yet she couldn't deny the connection she felt. That night, as Sarah drove home, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. She knew she was standing on the precipice of something that could change her life forever. The responsible part of her argued that she should distance herself, request a transfer to another floor perhaps, but her heart, beating faster at the mere thought of Michael's smile, urged her to explore these feelings. As she pulled into her driveway, Sarah made a decision. She would wait until Michael was discharged and then Then she would find a way to see if there was a chance for something more. Little did she know, this decision would set in motion a series of events that would test her in ways she never imagined, leading her down a path of love, loss, and ultimately redemption. The stage was set for a journey that would challenge everything Sarah thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the choices that define us. As she drifted off to sleep that night, her last thoughts were of Michael's warm brown eyes and the possibility of a future she had never dared to dream of before. The weeks following Michael's surgery were a blur of recovery and rehabilitation. Sarah found herself increasingly invested in his progress, her professionalism constantly at odds with her growing feelings. She watched with pride as Michael regained his strength, his determination to return to his daughters, fueling every step of his recovery. On a crisp autumn morning, the day of Michael's discharge finally arrived. Sarah's heart raced as she helped him gather his belongings, their hands brushing occasionally, sending shivers down her spine. "I can't thank you enough, Sarah," Michael said, his voice warm with gratitude. You've been my guardian angel through all of this." Sarah felt her cheeks flush. "I was just doing my job, Mr. Anderson. Please call me Michael," he insisted, his brown eyes twinkling. "And I think we both know it was more than that." The air between them crackled with unspoken emotions. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the arrival of Lily and Emma, Michael's daughters, bursting into the room with excited squeals. "Daddy!" they cried in unison, rushing to embrace their father. Sarah stepped back, watching the touching reunion with a mixture of joy and longing. As Michael hugged his girls tight, his eyes met Sarah's over their heads, conveying a silent message of thanks and something more, something that made her heart skip a beat. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself thinking constantly about Michael and his daughters. She missed their daily interactions, the easy banter, the way he made her feel seen and appreciated. It was during one of her shifts, as she was lost in thought, that her colleague and friend, Nurse Jenny, nudged her. "Earth to Sarah," Jenny teased. "You've been staring at that chart for 5 minutes. What's going on with you lately?" Sarah sighed, deciding to confide in her friend. "Jenny, I think I'm in trouble. I can't stop thinking about a patient, ex-patient." "Now," Jenny's eyes widened. "Sarah Wilson, are you telling me you've fallen for someone? I'm married to my job?" "It's not like that," Sarah protested weakly, but even she could hear the lack of conviction in her voice. "It's just, there's something special about him. About them, actually. He has 2 daughters and they've been through so much." Jenny listened as Sarah poured out the whole story. Michael's illness, their growing connection, and the conflict she felt about pursuing anything beyond a professional relationship. "Look," Jenny said finally, "I get why you're hesitating. It's complicated. But Sarah, I've known you for years and I've never seen you like this about anyone. Maybe it's worth exploring." Sarah mulled over Jenny's words for days. Finally, gathering her courage, she decided to reach out to Michael. She found his number in the hospital records, a minor breach of protocol that made her feel guilty, and with trembling fingers, dialed his number. Michael's voice, warm and surprised, answered on the 3rd ring. "Sarah, is everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine," she rushed to assure him. "I hope it's okay that I called. I wanted to check how you were doing." Their conversation flowed easily, as it always had. Before she knew it, an hour had passed, filled with laughter and shared stories. As they were about to hang up, Michael hesitated. "Sarah," he said, his voice suddenly serious, "I don't know if this is appropriate, but would you like to have coffee sometime, outside of the hospital, I mean?" Sarah's heart soared. "I'd love to," she replied, trying to keep the excitement out of her voice. They arranged to meet at a small cafe near the hospital the following Saturday. As Sarah hung up the phone, she felt a mix of elation and nervousness. This was it. The start of something new, something potentially wonderful. The week crawled by, each day bringing Sarah closer to her coffee date with Michael. She found herself daydreaming about the possibilities, imagining herself not just as a nurse, but as a partner, maybe even a mother figure to Lily and Emma. Finally, Saturday arrived. Sarah spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing her outfit, settling on a casual but flattering sweater and jeans combo. As she approached the cafe, she saw Michael waiting outside, looking handsome in a blue button-down shirt. Their eyes met, and Sarah felt her breath catch. Michael's face lit up with a smile that made her knees weak. As she drew closer, he surprised her by pulling her into a warm hug. "I'm so glad you came," he murmured into her hair. Sarah melted into his embrace, feeling for the first time in years like she was exactly where she belonged. As they pulled apart, both slightly flushed, Michael gestured towards the cafe door. "Shall we?" he asked, his hand gently resting on the small of her back. Sarah nodded, unable to stop smiling. As they entered the cozy cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee enveloping them, she felt a sense of excitement and possibility. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one filled with promise and the potential for love. Little did Sarah know that this moment of happiness was just the calm before a storm that would test her in ways she never imagined. As they sat down to order their coffee, the wheels of fate were already in motion, setting the stage for a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, sacrifice, and the true meaning of family. The autumn leaves were turning vibrant shades of red and gold as Sarah and Michael's relationship blossomed. Their coffee date had been the first of many, each encounter deepening their connection. Sarah found herself falling not just for Michael, but for the idea of the family they could become. One crisp Saturday morning, Michael invited Sarah to join him and the girls for a picnic in the park. As she approached the playground, her heart swelled at the sight of Michael pushing Emma on the swing while Lily climbed the monkey bars. "Sarah!" Lily called out, waving enthusiastically. "Dad said you were coming. Can you push me on the swings too?" Sarah's smile widened as she jogged over. "Of course, sweetie. Let's see if we can get you higher than your sister." As the afternoon wore on, Sarah found herself seamlessly integrating into their family dynamic. She helped Emma build a sandcastle, cheered for Lily as she mastered the monkey bars, and shared knowing glances with Michael that spoke volumes about their growing feelings. Later, as they spread out their picnic blanket under a large oak tree, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. Michael laid out sandwiches and fruit, while the girls chatted excitedly about their day at school. "Miss Wilson," Emma began, her voice serious despite the peanut butter smeared on her cheek, "are you going to be our new mommy?" The question caught Sarah off guard, causing her to choke slightly on her lemonade. Michael's eyes widened in surprise, but there was a hint of hope in his expression as he waited for her response. Sarah took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Emma, sweetie, I care about you and your sister very much, and I care about your dad too, but becoming a family, that's a big decision that takes time." Michael reached out, squeezing Sarah's hand gently. "That's right, girls. Sarah is very special to us, but we're all still getting to know each other. What's important is that we're happy spending time together, right?" The girls nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. As they resumed their meal, Sarah caught Michael's eye, seeing a mixture of gratitude and affection that made her heart skip a beat. As the weeks passed, Sarah found herself spending more and more time with Michael and the girls. She helped with homework, attended school plays, and even started learning to cook with varying degrees of success to contribute to family dinners. One evening, after tucking the girls into bed, Sarah and Michael sat on the porch swing, enjoying the cool night air. Michael turned to her, his expression serious. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "These past few months with you, they've been incredible. You've brought so much joy and love into our lives. I know, it might seem fast, but I can't imagine my future without you in it." Sarah's breath caught in her throat as Michael reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Her eyes widened as he opened it, revealing a delicate diamond ring. "Sarah Wilson, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and a mother to our girls?" Tears of joy sprang to Sarah's eyes as she nodded emphatically. "Yes, Michael, yes, I will." As he slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a passionate kiss, Sarah felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. This was everything she had ever wanted: a loving partner, a family to call her own, a future filled with promise. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding planning and adjusting to their new life together. Sarah moved into Michael's home, transforming it with her presence. The girls were thrilled, especially when Sarah suggested redecorating their rooms to reflect their growing personalities. On a snowy December afternoon, Sarah stood in front of a mirror in the bridal suite of a small chapel, hardly recognizing the radiant woman staring back at her. Her white gown was simple yet elegant, her hair adorned with tiny white flowers. A knock at the door interrupted her reverie. It was Lily and Emma, looking adorable in their matching flower girl dresses. "Hey, you look like a princess, Sarah," Emma exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. Lily, ever the more reserved of the two, approached Sarah with a small gift box. "We wanted to give you this before the ceremony," she said softly. Sarah opened the box to find a delicate silver locket. Inside was a picture of the four of them, taken during their park picnic months ago. On the other side was an engraving, "To our mom with love." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she hugged the girls tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I love you both so much." As she walked down the aisle towards Michael, Sarah felt as though her heart might burst with joy. This was the beginning of their forever, a family united by love and choice rather than just blood. Little did Sarah know that her fairy tale was about to face its greatest test, as she exchanged vows with Michael, promising to love and cherish him and the girls for all her days. Fate was already setting in motion a series of events that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. For now, though, as Michael kissed his bride and their guests cheered, Sarah allowed herself to bask in the pure happiness of the moment. She was exactly where she was meant to be, surrounded by the love of her new family, ready to embrace whatever the future might hold. The first year of Sarah and Michael's marriage passed in a blissful whirlwind. Their little family settled into a comfortable routine, with Sarah balancing her nursing career and her new role as a wife and stepmother. The Sarah girls flourished under her care, and Michael often marveled at how seamlessly she had fit into their lives. However, as their first wedding anniversary approached, Sarah found herself facing an unexpected challenge at work. St. Mary's Hospital was hosting a high-profile charity gala, and as one of the most dedicated nurses on staff, Sarah was asked to represent the nursing department at the event. "It's a great opportunity, Sarah," her supervisor, Dr. Thompson, explained. "We'll be hosting some of the wealthiest philanthropists in the city. Your presence could help secure vital funding for the hospital." Sarah hesitated, torn between her commitment to the hospital and her desire to spend her anniversary with her family. After discussing it with Michael, who encouraged her to attend, she reluctantly agreed. The night of the gala arrived, and Sarah felt out of place in her borrowed evening gown. As she mingled with Chicago's elite, she couldn't help but feel a pang of longing for the quiet family dinner she had originally planned. It was during a lull in the evening that Sarah first noticed him. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored tuxedo, with piercing dark eyes that seemed to command attention. He stood out among the crowd, exuding an aura of power and sophistication. "Nurse Wilson?" A smooth voice interrupted her thoughts. Sarah turned to find the man standing beside her, a charming smile playing on his lips. "I couldn't help but overhear your passionate speech about the pediatric ward. I'm Rashid Al-Fayed." Sarah's eyes widened in recognition. Rashid Al-Fayed was a name she had heard whispered throughout the evening. A billionaire businessman from Dubai, known for his generous charitable donations. "Mr. Al-Fayed," Sarah stammered, suddenly feeling flustered. "It's an honor to meet you. Thank you for supporting our hospital." Rashid waved his hand dismissively. "Please call me Rashid, and the honor is mine. I'm always impressed by individuals who dedicate their lives to helping others." As they talked, Sarah found herself captivated by Rashid's charm and intellect. He listened intently as she spoke about her work, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own experiences with healthcare initiatives in the Middle East. "You know, Sarah," Rashid said, his voice lowered conspiratorially, "I'm considering a substantial donation to St. Mary's, but I'd like to see more of the hospital's operations firsthand. Perhaps you could give me a tour sometime." Sarah hesitated for a moment, thinking of Michael and the girls, but the potential benefit to the hospital was too significant to ignore. "Of course," she replied. "I'd be happy to show you around." As the evening drew to a close, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. She had entered the gala as a dedicated nurse and left with a connection to one of the most influential men in the world. Over the next few weeks, Rashid's presence became a regular occurrence at St. Mary's. His promised tour turned into multiple visits, each time seeking out Sarah for her insights and company. She found herself looking forward to these encounters, drawn to the excitement and worldliness Rashid represented. At home, Sarah tried to maintain her focus on her family, but she couldn't deny the growing distraction. Michael noticed her preoccupation, the way her eyes would light up when discussing the hospital's latest improvements, funded by Rashid's generous donations. "You seem different lately," Michael observed one evening as they prepared dinner. "Is everything okay?" Sarah plastered, on a smile pushing down the confusion in her heart. "Of course, just busy with all the changes at the hospital. It's exciting times." But as she lay awake that night, Michael's soft snores beside her, Sarah couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that she was standing on the edge of a precipice. Rashid had hinted at opportunities, a chance to oversee a new medical facility in Dubai, to make a real difference on a global scale. The rational part of her mind reminded her of the loving family she had here, the life she had built with Michael and the girls. But another part, a part she had thought long dormant, yearned for adventure, for the chance to be more than just a small-town nurse. As dawn broke, Sarah made a decision. She would meet with Rashid one last time, to thank him for his contributions, and to make it clear that her place was here, with her family. Little did she know that this meeting would be the catalyst for a series of events that would test her loyalties, her values, and the very foundations of the life she had built. The stage was set for a confrontation between love and ambition, between the comfort of the known and the allure of the unknown. As Sarah drifted off to sleep, her mind swirling with conflicting emotions, she had no idea that her greatest challenge was yet to come. The Chicago skyline glittered in the distance as Sarah stood nervously in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton. She had agreed to meet Rashid here, away from the hospital, to discuss his final donation and to make her position clear. Her fingers, absently, twisted her wedding ring as she waited, a physical reminder of the commitment she was determined to honor. "Sarah, my dear," Rashid's smooth voice called out. She turned to see him approaching, impeccably dressed as always in a tailored suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. "You look lovely this evening." Sarah smoothed down her simple black dress, suddenly feeling underdressed. "Thank you, Rashid. I appreciate you meeting me here." They made their way to the hotel's upscale restaurant, where a private table awaited them. As they settled in, Sarah couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement at the luxurious surroundings. It was a world away from her usual life of hospital scrubs and family dinners. "I have wonderful news," Rashid began, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "The board has approved my proposal for the new medical center in Dubai. It's going to be groundbreaking, Sarah. State-of-the-art facilities, cutting-edge research, and I want you to be a part of it." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Me? But I'm just a nurse, Rashid. Surely you need someone with more experience, more qualifications." Rashid reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The warmth of his touch sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "You're selling yourself." "Short, Sarah. Your passion, your dedication. That's exactly what this project needs. I'm offering you the chance to be the head of nursing for the entire facility. You could make a real difference on a global scale." As Rashid painted a picture of the opportunity before her, Sarah found herself swept up in the possibilities. The chance to help shape healthcare policies, to implement innovative practices, to touch countless lives. It was intoxicating. "Of course," Rashid continued, his voice lowering to an intimate tone, "it would mean relocating to Dubai. I know it's a big ask, but think of the adventure, Sarah. The experiences you could have, the person you could become." Sarah's mind raced. Dubai. Halfway across the world, away from everything and everyone she knew, away from Michael and the girls. The thought brought her crashing back to reality. "Rashid, I'm flattered, truly," she began, her voice shaky. "But I have a family here, a husband, 2 stepdaughters. I can't just leave them." A flash of something, disappointment, frustration, crossed Rashid's face before his charming smile returned. "Of course I understand. Family is important. But Sarah, opportunities like this, they don't come along often. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices for our own growth, our own fulfillment." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. As Rashid dropped her off at home, he pressed a business card into her hand. "Think about it, Sarah. The offer stands. You have my number if you change your mind." That night, as Sarah lay beside Michael, sleep eluded her. She thought about the life she had built here, the comfortable routine, the love of her family, the satisfaction of her work at St. Mary's. But she couldn't shake the image Rashid had painted, a life of excitement, of making a real impact, on a global scale, of becoming more than she ever thought possible. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah found herself increasingly restless. She loved Michael and the girls, she truly did. But a part of her couldn't help wondering, was this all there was? Had she settled too quickly, given up on her own dreams and ambitions? The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Sarah had just finished a grueling shift at the hospital, dealing with budget cuts and outdated equipment. As she sat in her car in the parking lot, she found herself staring at Rashid's business card, which she had kept tucked away in her wallet. Before she could talk herself out of it, Sarah dialed the number. Rashid answered on the second ring as if he had been waiting for her call. "I've been thinking about your offer," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. I think I want to accept." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implications. As Rashid began to excitedly discuss arrangements, Sarah felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread. She had just taken the first step down a path that would irrevocably change her life and the lives of those she loved. That evening, as she walked through the front door of her home, greeted by the sounds of Michael and the girls preparing dinner, Sarah felt like an outsider in her own life. The guilt of her secret decision gnawed at her, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of anticipation for the future she had chosen. Little did Sarah know that her decision would set in motion a chain of events that would test her in ways she never imagined. As she plastered on a smile and joined her family at the dinner table, the clock was already ticking down to a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of her world. The following weeks were a blur of secret preparations and mounting guilt for Sarah. She found herself living a double life. By day, she was the loving wife and stepmother, going through the motions of her normal routine. By night, she was feverishly planning her new life in Dubai, corresponding with Rashid and his team about her upcoming role. As the day of her departure drew near, Sarah knew she could no longer postpone the inevitable. She had to tell Michael and the girls. The weight of her secret had become unbearable, casting a shadow over every moment with her family. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Sarah finally gathered the courage to speak. Michael was helping the girls with a puzzle in the living room, the scene of domestic tranquility, making Sarah's heart ache with the knowledge of what she was about to do. "Can we talk?" Sarah's voice trembled slightly as she addressed her family. "There's something important I need to tell you all." Michael looked up, concern etched on his face. "Of course, honey, what's going on?" Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for the words she was about to say. "I've been offered an incredible opportunity, a chance to head the nursing department at a new state-of-the-art medical center." She paused, her eyes meeting Michael's. "In Dubai." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's face went through a range of emotions, confusion, shock, and finally, a dawning realization of what this meant. "Dubai?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I've decided to take the job," Sarah continued, her words rushing out now. "It's an amazing opportunity, a chance to make a real difference on a global scale. I leave in 2 weeks." The puzzle piece in Emma's hand clattered to the floor. "You're leaving us?" Her small voice quivered. Lily, always the more perceptive of the two, looked at Sarah with a mixture of hurt and anger. "You promised. You promised you'd always be here for us. Michael stood up abruptly, his face a mask of disbelief and betrayal. Girls, go to your room. Sarah and I need to talk. As the girls reluctantly left, casting confused and hurt glances back at Sarah, Michael turned to face her. How long have you been planning this? He asked, his voice low and controlled. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. A few weeks. I didn't know how to tell you. A few weeks? Michael's voice rose. You've been making plans to leave us for weeks and you're just telling us now. 2 weeks before you go. Sarah, we're your family. I know, Sarah pleaded. I never meant to hurt any of you. It's just this opportunity. It's once in a lifetime. I can't pass it up. And what about us? Michael demanded. What about our life together? Our plans, the girls? Did none of that factor into your decision? Sarah felt her resolve wavering under the weight of Michael's words and the memory of the girls' hurt expressions. But then she thought of Rashid, of the gleaming hospitals in Dubai, of the difference she could make. She straightened her shoulders. I love you, Michael. I love the girls. But I need to do this for me. I need to see what I'm capable of, beyond just being a wife and stepmother. Michael's face hardened. I see. And when did we become not enough for you, Sarah? When did the life we built together become something you needed to escape from? The conversation devolved into a heated argument, years of unspoken frustrations and unfulfilled dreams bubbling to the surface. By the end, both Sarah and Michael were emotionally exhausted. I can't stop you, Michael said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. But I want you to understand what you're giving up. Once you walk out that door, Sarah, there's no coming back. Not to this life, not to us. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. She knew the magnitude of her decision, the bridges she was burning, but something inside her, a hunger for more, for different, propelled her forward. The next 2 weeks passed in a haze of tense silences and tearful goodbyes. The girls alternated between clinging to Sarah and giving her the cold shoulder. Michael retreated into himself, barely speaking to her, except when necessary. On the day of her departure, Sarah stood in the driveway, her suitcases packed and waiting. She hugged the girls tightly, promising to call and visit. Michael's goodbye was stiff, formal, a far cry from the loving embraces they once shared. As Sarah climbed into the taxi that would take her to the airport, she looked back at her family. Michael standing stoic, the girls clinging to him, their faces streaked with tears. For a moment, doubt clouded her mind. Was she making the biggest mistake of her life? But as the taxi pulled away, Sarah forced herself to look forward. Towards Dubai, towards Rashid, towards a new life filled with promise and potential. She was stepping into the unknown, leaving behind the safety and love of her family for the allure of a grander destiny. Little did Sarah know that her journey was far from over. The glittering promise of Dubai held challenges and revelations she could never have anticipated. As the plane took off, carrying her towards her new life, the true test of her decisions was only just beginning. The gleaming skyline of Dubai rose before Sarah like a mirage, all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the modest Chicago neighborhood she had left behind. Rashid had sent a private car to meet her at the airport, a luxury that both thrilled and unsettled her. As the car wound its way through the city, Sarah's mind drifted to the family she had left behind. Michael's final words echoed in her ears. You're making a mistake you'll regret, but she pushed them away, focusing instead on the opportunity that lay ahead. The medical center was nothing short of spectacular. Cutting-edge technology blended seamlessly with elegant design, and Sarah felt a surge of pride as Rashid gave her a personal tour. This is your domain now, he said, his hand lightly touching her back. You'll have complete autonomy to implement your vision. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement and challenge. Sarah threw herself into her work, developing new protocols, training staff, and pushing the boundaries of traditional nursing care. She was good at her job, better than good, she was exceptional. Rashid was a constant presence, offering support, guidance, and increasingly personal attention. Late-night strategy meetings turned into dinner invitations. Elaborate gifts began to appear in her office. designer watches, rare books, exotic flowers that filled her luxurious apartment with their heady fragrance. "You're transforming healthcare in the region," Rashid would tell her, his dark eyes intense. "You're making a real difference, Sarah. This is what you were meant for." And for a while, Sarah believed him. The phone calls home became less frequent, the connection with Michael and the girls growing more distant with each passing week. When she did speak to them, the conversations were stilted, filled with awkward pauses and unspoken tensions. One evening, as Sarah worked late in her office, Rashid appeared with a bottle of expensive champagne. "We're celebrating," he announced. "The World Health Organization wants to feature our pediatric wing as a model for international healthcare development." The champagne was smooth, expensive. Sarah found herself relaxing, letting her guard down in a way she hadn't since arriving in Dubai. Rashid moved closer, his presence overwhelming. "You've accomplished so much," he murmured, his hand finding hers. "You're extraordinary, Sarah." The line between professional admiration and something more began to blur. Sarah knew she was treading dangerous ground, but the combination of professional success, personal attention, and the intoxicating Dubai lifestyle made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. The medical center's finances didn't quite add up. Certain protocols seemed designed to funnel money in ways that made Sarah uncomfortable. When she raised questions, Rashid was quick to deflect, to charm her back into complacency. Her phone calls home became even more infrequent. The girls' voices grew more distant, Michael's tone more cold and detached. Sarah told herself it was for the best, that she was creating a better future for everyone. Then came the night that changed everything. A confidential report crossed Sarah's desk. Financial irregularities that went far beyond simple accounting errors. Millions of dollars were being diverted, research funds were being manipulated, and at the center of it all was Rashid. Sarah's world began to spin. The dream she had sacrificed everything for was built on a foundation of lies. The medical center, her grand opportunity, was nothing more than an elaborate front for something far more complex. As she sat in her office, the report spread out before her, Sarah realized the true cost of her ambition. She had left behind a loving family, destroyed the trust of her husband and children, all for a mirage. Rashid's true nature began to reveal itself. The charming mentor transformed into a controlling, manipulative figure. Her autonomy became a carefully constructed illusion, her every move subtly monitored and controlled. Sarah knew she had a choice to make: stay and become complicit in whatever scheme Rashid was running, or find a way out. But escape would not be easy. She had cut herself off from everything and everyone she once knew. As the Dubai night pressed against her office windows, Sarah realized her greatest challenge was just beginning. The glittering city that had promised her freedom was now her prison, and the man she had trusted was her jailer. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test everything Sarah believed about herself, about love, about sacrifice. And she knew deep in her heart that the road back, if there was a road back, would be the most difficult journey of her life. The days following Sarah's discovery of the financial irregularities became a delicate dance of survival. She knew Rashid was watching her every move, his once charming demeanor now replaced by a cold, calculating presence that sent shivers down her spine. Late one night, Sarah carefully copied the incriminating documents, creating digital backups and sending encrypted files to a secure email account. Her hands trembled as she worked, fully aware of the potential consequences of her actions. Her opportunity came unexpectedly. A medical conference in London provided the perfect escape route. Sarah meticulously planned every detail, knowing that one wrong move could trap her forever in Rashid's web of manipulation. As she prepared for the conference, Sarah made a decision that broke her heart. She needed help, and there was only one person she could turn to: Michael. The first call in months was painful. Michael's voice was guarded, distant. "Sarah," he answered, surprise and caution mixing in his tone. "Michael, I need your help," she began, her voice cracking. "I've made a terrible mistake. I'm in trouble, and I need someone I can trust." She explained everything: The financial irregularities, Rashid's true nature, her growing fear. Michael listened in silence, years of hurt and betrayal hanging between them. "Why should I help you?" he finally asked, his voice cold. "After what you did to our family?" Sarah's response was raw, vulnerable. "Because I'm desperate. Because I was wrong. Because I've lost everything and I need to make things right." A long silence followed. Sarah could hear the faint sounds of the girls in the background, a reminder of everything she had left behind. "Send me everything you have," Michael said finally. "I have a lawyer friend who specializes in international corporate investigations. But Sarah," his voice hardened, "this doesn't fix what happened between us." The next few days were a blur of careful planning and constant fear. Sarah knew Rashid was becoming suspicious. His calls became more frequent, his tone more controlling. She could feel the walls closing in. The night before her planned departure to London, Rashid invited her to dinner. Sarah knew it was a test, a final attempt to assert his control. The restaurant was opulent, overlooking the Dubai skyline. Rashid was dressed impeccably, but Sarah could see the tension behind his carefully crafted smile. "You've been distant lately," he observed, his voice smooth as silk. "Is everything all right?" Sarah forced a smile. "Just preparing for the conference. It's an important opportunity for the medical center." But Rashid wasn't convinced. As the evening progressed, his questions became more pointed, more invasive. Sarah could feel the trap closing around her. "I've been thinking," Rashid said casually, "perhaps you should reconsider going to London. I need you here, managing some sensitive projects." Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. "I appreciate the opportunity," she replied, carefully, "but I've already committed to the conference. It's important for our international reputation." Rashid's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course," he said softly. "Family always comes first, doesn't it?" The warning was clear. He knew something was wrong. That night, Sarah barely slept. She packed carefully, leaving nothing behind that might reveal her plans. Her flight was early the next morning, her escape carefully orchestrated. As dawn broke, she slipped out of her apartment, her heart pounding. A taxi was waiting, her carefully packed bag hidden from view. She knew Rashid would be watching, would be looking for any sign of her true intentions. But Sarah had learned something crucial during her time in Dubai. She had learned to be careful, to be strategic, to fight for her survival. As the taxi wound through the early morning streets, Sarah allowed herself a moment of hope. Michael was helping her. Her lawyer friend was gathering evidence. She had a chance, a slim chance, of exposing Rashid and reclaiming her life. But she also knew the road ahead would be difficult. She had burned bridges with her family, destroyed the trust of her husband and children. Redemption, if it was possible, would be a long and painful journey. The airport loomed ahead. Freedom was so close she could almost taste it. But Sarah knew her real challenge was just beginning. Little did she know that the next few hours would change everything. Her life, her family, her entire future hung in the balance of what was about to unfold. The London airport was a blur of movement and tension. Sarah clutched her bag, constantly looking over her shoulder, half expecting Rashid to appear at any moment. Her encrypted files were her lifeline, evidence that could potentially bring down his entire operation. Michael's lawyer, Jonathan Reynolds, was waiting for her in the arrivals area. A tall, distinguished man in his early 50s, he greeted her with a professional but compassionate handshake. "Ms. Wilson," he said quietly, "we need to move quickly. Rashid's resources are extensive and he won't take this betrayal lightly." They moved to a secure location, a nondescript office in central London. As Sarah began to share her documentation, Jonathan's expression grew increasingly grave. "These financial records," he muttered, "they're more than just corporate fraud. This looks like an international money laundering operation, with connections to multiple governments." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not just risking your career," Jonathan explained. "You're potentially exposing a network that powerful people want to keep hidden." Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Michael was dealing with his own challenges. The girls, Lily and Emma, were struggling with their mother's absence and the complicated emotions surrounding Sarah's departure. "Dad," Lily asked one evening, her teenage eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and confusion. "Do you still love her?" Michael's response was carefully measured. "Love is complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes people make choices that hurt others, but that doesn't mean the love completely disappears." As days turned into weeks, the investigation intensified. Jonathan worked tirelessly, connecting the dots between Rashid's medical center and a complex web of financial improprieties. Sarah's life became a careful dance of survival. She moved between safe houses, constantly changing her location. Her communication with Michael was limited, routed through secure channels to protect both of them. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A whistleblower from within Rashid's organization reached out, providing additional evidence that corroborated Sarah's initial findings. The International Financial Crimes Unit became involved, and suddenly, Rashid's carefully constructed empire began to crumble. But victory came with a price. Sarah knew that her relationship with her family, with Michael, and the girls was irreparably damaged. The trust she had broken couldn't be easily restored. During a video call with Michael and the girls, Sarah's heart broke as she saw their guarded expressions. Emma, now older and more understanding, listened intently as Sarah explained her journey. Her mistakes, her deep regret. "I know I can't undo the pain I've caused," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "But I want you to know that I never stopped loving you, not for a single moment." The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Rashid was eventually arrested, his international network exposed. Sarah's testimony was crucial in bringing him to justice. But the personal cost was immense. Michael had moved on, focusing on raising the girls. While he wasn't hostile, the warmth they once shared was gone. Sarah was allowed limited, supervised visits with the girls, a painful reminder of everything she had lost. 1 year after her return, Sarah found herself working at a small community clinic, far from the glamorous medical center in Dubai. She had traded international recognition for something more meaningful, the chance to truly help people, to rebuild her life one patient at a time. On the girls' birthdays, she would send carefully chosen gifts, not expensive or extravagant, but meaningful. A book for Lily, who loved reading. Art supplies for Emma, who had discovered a passion for painting. Small bridges, hoping that one day they might be rebuilt. As the sun set on another day, Sarah reflected on her journey. She had learned that love wasn't about grand gestures or international opportunities. It was about presence, about consistency, about showing up even when it's difficult. Her phone buzzed, a message from Michael, a simple photo of the girls smiling at a school event. It wasn't an invitation back, but it was a window, a tiny, fragile hope. Sarah smiled, understanding. That redemption was a journey, not a destination.